Hey everybody, it's Jay. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back if you've been here before. I've been on the carnivore diet for the past 3.5 months. I eat about 2 to 3 pounds of bacon per week. I eat 3 dozen eggs, about 7 pounds of beef and other meat, and lots of butter and fat. And I've lost over 60 pounds in the 3.5 months that I've been doing this diet. I had a full physical 2 weeks ago, including all the blood work, and today I'm going to go over the results, comparing them with what they were a year ago before I started the diet, and the results from the previous checkup that I've had, which was back in 2017. I was pretty surprised by the results and a little bit angry too, which I'll get into the reasons for that further in the video. So without any further delay, let's get into the numbers. So my last physical was on 11/11, November 11th. The one before that was back in 2002, 11/3/2002, November 3, 2002. So just a little over a year passed between the two physicals. I'm going to start with the numbers that I had a year ago first, when my cholesterol was much worse. My total cholesterol was 222 a year ago, and my triglycerides were 622, which is out of control. If you get much above that, you run the risk of pancreatitis imminently. So once your numbers get above 600, that's really bad. My HDL, or the good cholesterol, was 25, and my LDL, the bad cholesterol, was 93. That gave me a ratio of 8.9, which was pretty high. Really, my cholesterol profile a year ago was a mess. My results from this year, from 2 weeks ago, were much, much better. My total cholesterol was 181. That's down over 30. That's down almost 15%. My triglycerides were 119. That's down like 80%. That's a huge decrease. My HDL, the bad cholesterol, was one number that went up a bit. It went from 25 to 46, so actually it almost doubled. But my LDL, my good cholesterol, went from 93 to 114, and my cholesterol ratio went down to 3.9 from 8.9. So all of my numbers this year were within range except for the LDL. I'm not too concerned about the LDL. It actually is a bit above what it should be, but not much. And I've gone from 5 numbers out of their range to only 1 number that's out of range, and not by much. So look guys, I've been eating 4 to 6 dozen eggs a week, 2 to 3 pounds of bacon, 7 to 10 pounds of beef, lots of fat, lots of butter, and no vegetables, no carbs, no grains, none of the heart-healthy food. And my numbers are way, way better than they've been in years. I pulled up my 2017 numbers, which are the earliest numbers I have. Even in 2017, 6 years ago, my numbers were pretty much all higher except for the HDL, which of course is the one that you want to have higher. My numbers in 2017 were as follows. Total was 230. That's a good 20% higher than it is today. Back then I was eating a mostly vegetarian diet. My triglycerides back then were 309, almost 3 times what they are today. My HDL was 35, 3/4 of what it is today. That's when you want to have be higher. My HDL was 133, which was a good 10% higher than it is today. And my ratio was 6.6, over range and almost double what it is today. Going back at least to 2010, my cholesterol numbers were high and my doctor was recommending that I take a statin. I never did, but I was getting pretty close to taking one given what my last year's numbers were, having that triglyceride over 619. So I look at how things were for me 4 months ago. I was 100 pounds overweight. My joints ached. I was fatigued all the time. I couldn't walk more than half a mile without getting tired. I would have sugar crashes all day long. I'd need to take a nap in the afternoon. My sleep wasn't good. My digestion wasn't good. And my numbers, my cholesterol numbers were out of control. Now, after 3.5 months of eating the food they tell us not to eat, bacon, eggs, steak, butter, my poor health symptoms have disappeared. I've lost over 60 pounds. My cholesterol is back in a normal range. This is exactly what they say shouldn't happen, but it did happen for me. Okay, I'm going on a bit of a rant here, but it's important. When I walked into my doctor's office this November, the first thing he said, now remember he had said a year ago that I was a heart attack waiting to happen, and basically read me the Riot Act. When I walked in this time, he took one look at me and he smiled and said, "Jay, you've been doing a good job. What did you do?" And I told him I've been on the carnivore diet and I've only been eating meat. And his face dropped. He said, "You know, that's the craziest thing you can do. It's not sustainable. You're going to have terrible cholesterol numbers. I'm going to have you go down and get an ECG and an artery scan done because I think you're in big trouble." Basically, he felt that what I was doing overpowered any weight loss I was experiencing and that I was killing myself. I decided to wait until I saw my numbers before I got all stressed out about it and see what happened. You know, I'm feeling so much better that I can't imagine my cholesterol numbers are worse than they were. 2 weeks passed, I have the numbers now, and my numbers are fine, much to his surprise. He didn't get into it much when we were discussing the numbers. I think he may have been a little bit regretful that he read me the Riot Act a couple weeks earlier, but it brings up a point that I want to talk about here. A lot of us do what the doctor tells us. We don't listen to our own bodies. Gotta remember that the doctors, you know, they're not bad for recommending what they do. When studies are done, the studies will show that most people respond better to certain things. And I'm not going to argue. I think most people probably do respond better to a heart-healthy diet, to a Mediterranean diet, especially in Mediterranean countries where their ancestors have been eating that way for generations. And especially for younger people who have never gotten overweight and blown out their metabolism. But for people like me, who were in pretty good shape for most of our lives, but then hit our 40s and started getting the mid-40s belly fat, and everything else that comes along with working in a cubicle or an office, being sedentary and eating the American diet, which is full of sugar, we blow out our metabolisms. And at 55, if I'm eating the Mediterranean diet, I'm getting too many carbs. And those carbs create cravings. I end up eating more sugar. I don't lose weight on a Mediterranean diet. I've tried it. It doesn't work for me. In 6 months, if I'm on the Mediterranean diet, I won't lose any weight. I won't feel good. And I actually might gain weight in that time. So to solve the problem for me, I have to cut it at the roots. It's the carbohydrates. It's the sugar. Somewhere along the line, I blew my metabolism out and I have an addiction to carbohydrates. If I eat one serving of whole grains, of quinoa or something like that, I start getting cravings. Then the next step up is to go for the harder stuff, the pastry or the ice cream. This is an addiction. It's not something that can be easily controlled. It's like an alcoholic who has a drink and then needs another drink. Sugar addiction is a real thing. Why do you think that you walk through the stores now and they're full of sugary products that have 80 to 100 carbohydrates per serving? A bag of cookies, a sugar cereal. They all have this impact. And if you look around, if you go to the mall, if you go to Walmart, if you go to many places, you'll see that at least 30% of the people around you are overweight. The data may show that most people have a better result from doing a Mediterranean diet and sticking with it, or a healthy diet. But if there's anything I've learned from this experience, it's that nutrition is not a one-size-fits-all proposition. We're all different. We have different ancestry. My ancestors came from the British Isles. They did not come from the Mediterranean. So they weren't eating Mediterranean diet for generations and generations and generations. My ancestors were eating more meat. I can't say there's a correlation between the two because my brother's a vegan and he's doing perfectly well with that diet. But I do think that genetics have something to do with this, as does our past eating habits and how long we've been overweight. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical researcher. I don't have any medical background except my own experience with this. So take it as it is. Your experience may be very different if you do the carnivore diet. Whatever you do, make sure you do work with your doctor and at least get your numbers, your blood work done so you can see what your numbers are. If my cholesterol had been out of control, I might have a very different outtake on it now than I do. My cholesterol went from bad for many years to good in several months on the carnivore diet. So that's something that I've verified, I've proven to myself, and because of that, I'm comfortable being on this diet for another 3 or 4 months until I reach my target weight. What will I do when I get to my target weight? I don't know yet. But I will never go back to eating sugar and carbohydrate-laden food. But that's for another video. I did say there was one more number in this blood test that was of a little bit of concern to me, so let's get into it. On 11/3/22 last year, my glucose was 148. This year it was 123, which is better than it was a year ago, but it's still high. It's still within the pre-diabetic range. How that can be happening when I haven't been eating any sugar, I don't know. It could be an anomaly, but I'm going to have to keep a close eye on it. My hemoglobin A1C went from 6.2 to 5.6, which actually my doctor, he said that that was a good sign, that he looked more at the hemoglobin, and now that that's within range, he felt pretty comfortable with that and thought I didn't need to worry about my blood sugar for the time being. So I'm going to keep a close eye on that. If you've blown out your metabolism, you can suffer from diabetes even if you go onto the carnivore diet. Once the damage is done, sometimes it's done. In another 3 months, who knows, my numbers may be down even further. We're all different. What works for me might not work for you, and vice versa. 70% of people might have bad impacts from a carnivore diet, but hey, 30% of us do very well with it. In my case, I decided to try it out, work with my doctor, see where my numbers fell, if there was improvement, and because there was, he's no longer telling me I need to get off the diet. He's stopped talking about it, and I'm making my own decision based on what I feel and what I saw with these numbers. So that's it. We are responsible for our bodies. Even the doctor can only give us advice. He's not the one who has to live with what we're living with in our own experience. He can only go on what works for most people. I'm not saying don't listen to your doctor, but I'm saying work with them. Because in the end, they do want what's best for you. They just have to operate within the constraints of their profession. Have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you on the next video.